Can you tell the listeners out there, Nick, how disgusting are my uniforms after a loop on a hot day?
I mean, they're like, they change colors. Like, it's like a rainbow. I don't know how you do it, but yeah, it's pretty incredible. They don't smell great. Yeah, you're interesting.
I know that they don't smell great, but they're soaked. I mean, absolutely. It's like I jumped into a lake. Welcome to the Caddie Tales Podcast. I am Mark the Caddy, joined as always by my sidekick, colleague, friend, fellow looper Nick, and we are excited to talk to you about how the game of golf that so many of us love intersects with the game of life that we are immersed in. And happy to be doing so with some new swag today. Nick, I have some for you here too, and for those of you on YouTube, I guess I'm holding this up in a somewhat discombobulated fashion, but I've got a new raincoat from Zero Restriction Golf, and I mean, it is fire. This is just a banger of a coat. And they also sent a vest and a quarter zip, and they sent them in 2X and also the same items in extra large. My wife was a little bit confused when she opened the box about why there was extra large in there, but I said they got my buddy Nick covered. And so, yeah, check them out, folks. Go to zerorestriction.com, type in the promo code BESTBALL20, and you can get 20% off of your order. But just really, really elite rain gear, and then also some other clothing that just fits really well and looks pretty awesome and is high quality. So give them a look if you are in the market as we get prepared for this golf season. And, you know, Nick, as I pull out this raincoat, it just has me thinking about life out on the golf course and all the weather that we experience here in Sheboygan. Just over the last week, we experienced so many different kinds of weather. Last week, early in the week, we had wind advisory. You could just hear it pounding on the windows, 50 miles an hour. Yeah, and then we had this outlier of a couple of days where just super sunny. I think you said once you saw your temperature gauge at 54.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was crazy.
So 50 and then the 50s might as well feel like 80.
Yeah. And after like sub-zero weather the whole winter, yeah.
Yeah, well, and like really the week before that, I think we had or somewhere around there, we had school called off for a couple of days because it was so cold, minus 30 wind chills and stuff. So I think that's why I got a bit of a cold. All that up and down weather seems to do it to people. And then after having that 50-some degree weather, I woke up on Sunday to an inch or two of snow outside that I didn't even know was coming. It really wasn't forecast in any major way. And usually when it's going to snow nowadays, local news, that's kind of like their bread and butter is to get you all scared about that. So anyway, it got me thinking about weather and life on the golf course. Zero Restriction got me, in the mood for some rain. And so I thought it'd be fun for us to talk today about caddying and the elements. That's a big part of our job. And also, I was thinking about it because did you happen to watch any of the golf tournament this last weekend at Pebble Beach?
I didn't watch much of it. I literally tuned in to see Rory's last hole. And that's as much as I saw, yeah. Yeah, no, I watched quite a bit, actually, and Saturday was fun because, and especially as I was scrolling through Twitter, I could see how much people were enjoying it. It was just, rough weather. The wind was above 30. It was raining on them, and it's fun to see those guys have to play in that stuff and see how they're going to handle it, and they handle it a whole lot better than we do, and yet it's still something that they have to deal with, and it's fun to just see on TV and envision all of that. So if I had to just throw it out there, Nick, what is the weather that has you pulling up to the course and dreading your job? If there was one kind of weather that you dislike more than any other, what would it be? Yeah, definitely like when it's cold and rainy. Like that mixture is awful for me because you can deal with a little rain if it's warm out because then at least you're warm, but like the fact that you're cold and wet all day, your feet are going to be soaked all day. It's tough.
Yeah, I was, when I was thinking about that, I was thinking, my mind went to the wind because we deal with the wind so much. I think well, if we didn't have the wind, how much easier would this job be over the course of a season, But there's nothing more miserable being out there when it's like a real soggy day I have found that it makes my feet hurt so much more. Having your feet wet. And always, let's say it rained before you're out there, or and it's not even raining at that point, but out in the junk, all this stuff is soaked, and inevitably on the first hole, your player's going to hit it in there with their first shot.
We'll go look for it, and then your feet are soaked.
And it really impacts the day. Some people would say, well, why don't you get waterproof shoes? I just can't find any that are comfortable enough to walk that many miles on.
Yeah, and you need traction too. And so it's like you got to try to find something with some traction that'll keep your feet dry. So it's like...
Yeah, it's a tough find. So anyways, I think you have to go with rain, a persistent rain being pretty tough. Certainly it's harder when it's colder, but I don't particularly love it when it's warmer. But yeah, I think about some days that we had last year, and there was one that jumps out at me just the second day of the season when, it's wind chills in the trees, it's raining, it's sleeting, it's snowing a little bit, it's 30, 40 mile an hour winds. And, if people hadn't paid hundreds of dollars and come from another city, there's no chance that you would play golf. There was no golf going on at any other golf course in the area, but we're unique in that we're a destination and stuff. And so out there, and just absolutely, it's almost comical after a certain point, but yeah, it's part of our job. And then what happens, I think, those days you get, and there's not many of them, where it's just the total package, 70 some degrees, no wind, sunny. I mean, don't you feel like when you're out there, you could caddy 3 loops on those days?
Yeah, I love that too. When people ask you, they're like, "Is it always like not windy like this? Like how often does this happen?" And you're like, "Almost never." So just enjoy it.
Yeah, no, almost never. But when you get those days that are just perfect weather, you look around and you're walking up the fairway. And if you happen to have, just by chance that day, some lighter bags, it is amazing how much easier the job feels. I mean, really, it feels like you're not even working. And that tells me how much the wind impacts the job. It may not be as physically uncomfortable as the, being soaked, but as far as exhaustion, over the course of a year, the wind takes a lot out of you. So what are some memorable loops that you can think of, Nick, that you've had in the extreme weather?
So I remember a Ryder Cup year, which I think it was like 2021. I remember we had like the stands up. You remember that? How we had the stands up on the course. So we get to like hole 17 and, we can kind of tell like bad weather's coming, blah, 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 blah. So it starts like, coming down a little bit, and we go under the bleachers on 17, and they blow the horn finally. So me and the other caddy head back to the shack, and we're like, all right, we're gonna go back. We can't be out here in lightning. The guys are like, oh, that's fine. We're gonna keep playing, and we're like, you're gonna keep playing? Like, it's lightning, it's kind of dangerous. And they're like, yeah, is that okay? I'm like, you paid me my money, do whatever you want. Just don't don't get killed or anything. So so head back to the shack and all that. And then it was like one of those days where it's like kind of busy. So you're not sure if you're going to work again. So you got to stay there for a couple hours. And I just remember being in the shack for 2 hours with that AC on and just freezing my butt off. And that was kind of miserable.
Yeah. No, I what's funny about the lightning is how people really don't seem to care if we get killed out there, if we die.
Yeah, right. Like the clubs are made of metal, so that's not a great combo for lightning.
No, it's like, first of all, it's like, okay, I don't know. I guess I get the type A nature and the competitive nature of wanting to finish the hole or the shot. But I'm like, guys, even if you're tipping well, I'm not getting paid enough to die out here and or get hit by lightning.
It's not going to be any good.
It always leaves a bit of taste in my mouth. Like, man, why are you doing this?
Yeah, puts us in a really awkward spot for sure.
Right. So I always think that it's amazing to see how extreme things can get so quickly with that lake being there. There are some things that roll in, and I always tell the story of when it was real hot and muggy one day. We're on the 10th green. Nothing is, the weather's been warm, muggy. It's still. By the time we were in the 11th fairway, the temperature had dropped 30 degrees. You couldn't see 10 yards in front of you with fog, and rain's all of a sudden coming, and it was fascinating to see how quickly that had happened. You know, you're 30 degrees colder. The wind is now howling at, 30, 40 miles an hour. It's foggy, and it happens in the matter of minutes. And then there's days where it's forecast that, you get nothing. I always think it's funny. There is no greater divide in outlook. I mean, not even between the left and the right in the political arena. There is no greater divide than the difference between caddies and players at the bag drop on a day where there's stuff in the forecast.
Yeah.
You can literally have the same radar up, and the caddy is going to be saying, my gosh, we're going to get hammered here. And the player's like, I think it's going to miss us. I think we're going to be okay.
This is it's going north.
Yeah. It's hilarious because the caddy is, if I'm being honest out there, folks, the caddy's hoping that the player maybe takes a rain check, cancels, and they avoid going out there in that mess. And the player obviously is hoping for the exact opposite and stuff. So they may be seeing what they want. It's always funny, though, when the player has insisted that you're going to be okay. And you're like, well, I don't know. That's a pretty huge color on the radar coming right over us. So you're just like, well, I guess it'll just reveal itself. What's the hottest weather you've ever caddied in? There's a day that I'm remembering from not this past season, but the year before.
Yeah. I think it's the day that we caddied together. I think it was like the 4th of July. That was that was incredibly hot. I know I think I've told this story before, but you sweated through your jumper like after the first hole. It was incredible. One of the most incredible feats I've ever seen before in my life.
Can you tell the listeners out there, Nick, how disgusting are my uniforms after a loop on a hot day?
I mean, they're like, they change colors. Like, it's like a rainbow. I don't know how you do it, but it's pretty incredible. They don't smell great. You're interesting.
I don't know that they don't smell great, but they're soaked. I mean, absolutely. It's like I jumped into a lake.
Yeah, it is, especially on that day. Like, it was so hot, and
yeah. Now, yes, that was with Top 100 Rick. And we were just flying through that loop. I remember there's a caddy that we're friends with who says we were a foursome that day, and now we were with good golfers, and he only had a threesome behind us, and they couldn't keep up with us. And that's how much our guys wanted to, didn't want to be out there, and they hustled and whatever. So yeah, that was pretty cool. There was a day that's hotter. It was the heat index was up at like 108, 110. And we have wonderful people on the golf staff and in the caddy management who care about us and our well-being a great deal. But they've heard every complaining and whining in the book from caddies. Okay. So on bad weather days, I think they get tired of it. They go to their office, wait it out, and they know guys don't want to work, and they're just waiting to see who they can cut, who they can't, whatever. It's all a big game. But, I wouldn't say that we feel like we can crawl into their lap and have them read us a story or something. It's not that kind of nurturing relationship. So, but I remember this day in particular, like there was legitimate concern, like we don't want to send guys out there. I remember the manager calling people who are part-time or former workers, hey, can you come in? I don't want to send guys out for a second loop. And I had never seen that before, wow. And I can't do, and so it's like a heat index of like 108, and you're just absolutely wrecked. And it was a double loop day. And I know only a few going out. Well, I was talking to one of the guys this year who did do 2 loops on that day. And this is a guy who does 2 loops all the time. I mean, 200 loops in a season, whatever. And he's with another guy that does 2 loops all the time. And that's just, they're not complainers, it's whatever. And he was talking about how they got to hole like 11 on the second loop. And they're like, I can't walk another step. I think I'm done. And, I like it in the sense on those really hot days. It's weird. When you take how the players are as far as their kind of understanding of what the caddy might be going through, I would say that on a hot day is when they might be the most empathetic and most concerned.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really see it all that often, but yeah, I mean, if they get you a Gatorade or something, it is nice for sure.
Yeah, right. I mean, but I think rainy weather, I don't think they all understand how heavy those bags get. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, they're dealing with the rain too, and it's not going to kill us. But like, that there's a hardship there, in that all of a sudden you're carrying a 60-pound bag because it's just waterlogged. There's some challenges there. But when there's the heat, I think they're like, yeah, this might be just verging on a little bit dangerous or something. Maybe it's just for the big guys that they care so much.
Maybe.
The most extreme heat, 108, 110. We get that about once or twice a year. We get about 2 spells of that.
Yeah. And they always ask us too, so we wear the jumpers, obviously the onesies. They're like, do those things breathe pretty well? And you're like, no, not at all. It's like a polyester onesie that's trapping in all the heat. So not even a little bit.
Yeah, so there's that extreme. Now, as far as rain, the most extreme I've seen has happened multiple times where you're out there and from the tee box to the green, all of a sudden the course is literally underwater. I mean, the greens are, there's standing water on them. And I always find one of the funnier things being players who want to putt effectively on greens where there are standing water.
Yeah, like the ball's rolling and you can see the water trails with the ball.
It's like, okay, we may have to adjust the match that you're playing right now, guys. The conditions did not allow for what we're doing here, and so I think that the rain will come down, and that is where it's always in the caddy shack. There's just such a little envy going on, because you do get, on those days, you'll get a certain number of players who say we're done. Okay, especially if it looks like it's going to go on for a while. And especially if a lightning delay happens because of it. So you'll get a good number of them say, okay, we're not waiting this out 3 hours, so we're done. And so the caddies get called up, they get a gratuity, they get to go home. And then there's other guys who have to sit there for that whole time knowing my players aren't quitting, we're going back out there. And it's just a mental grind. Of course, players paid for it, they can go back out there and stuff. We're talking in a perfect world, you wouldn't have to wait that long and whatever. So, but there are some players who've been to these kind of destination courses numerous times, older players who, just don't, it's maybe not the biggest thing on their bucket list. And so they're like, yeah, we're going to go back to the hotel and stuff. One of the things that does surprise people, and I just had a conversation with someone on Twitter about it, is their assumption is let's say you have a 5-hour loop turn into a 9-hour loop because of weather delays and you're soaked and whatever. Their assumption is you're going to get tipped much better.
No.
And the reality is it's the exact opposite. It's going to be most likely an average or below average gratuity.
Yeah, those are the days you wish you were paid by the hour instead of just one lump sum.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess you would say it's just it's a different breed of clientele that waited out. There may be the people who saved all year. They're not as flush or whatever. It's not a character assassination. It's just maybe a different demographic that waits out those loops. And high rollers are like, we're going to go drink bourbon at the hotel. So so rain, I've seen literally this last season, we had one day where almost 2 inches came down in an hour.
Ouch. Yeah. I remember I slipped and fell one day and that was really bad. I slipped, the bag went up in the air and landed on top of me, and somehow the leg got stuck in the ground and was pinning me against the ground, and I'm just getting rained on. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? It was kind of comical, actually.
Yeah, right. I remember slipping on the 18th fairway this year, and just kind of looking at my player with this look of defeat, man, this stinks. And, and then just kind of laughing about it because it was almost done. So you're like, yeah. And then there's always, even in the group, I remember that particular day, there's one guy who's already run up to the top behind the 18th green, onto the patio. He's like, screw this, and then I've got another guy who's still looking at his putt and, what do you think it's going to do? And so even in the group, you have different kind of people, but 2 inches in an hour is not unheard of. More likely we deal with just the spitting throughout of loop. I think it's kind of fun when the real crazy stuff comes, because it's there is that element of shared experiences, shared misery that is kind of cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and then as far as wind, what would you say is the most extreme wind you've played in? or caddied in?
I just remember one day, like, we were on hole 12, which is a short par 3, and like it's like 110-yard shot, and I told him to hit, I think it's hybrid, which is like 220 club, and he's short, and I'm like, what in the world? And it just like, yeah, just can't believe your eyes, basically.
Right. Yeah. No, there's, excuse me out there, still trying to get over this little whatever I have. Yeah, when we were watching Pebble the other day, I was thinking back to some of the crazy shots that you've had to tell people, because I saw, they were talking about Rory on one shot, how much club he adjusted, and then he still came up short. And I liked how on the particular shot that I'm thinking of, Rory just looked at his caddy and was laughing. I wish that all of our players just took it that way.
Yeah, they've played in it before.
Yeah. So, it's not uncommon. Hey, it's 130. Or let's hit a 190 club or a 200-yard club. There is a certain element of, I think you're just guessing and making stuff up at that point. Who really is so in tune with their golf game to know which club in that kind of conditions. But we had a stretch early in the season last year where it's like 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds for a couple of days in a row, and it's just exhausting. And so that's what I mean by maybe you're not wet and miserable that way. You're not getting pulled off the course because of lightning. You're maybe not freezing and shivering. Over the course of the season, I think the wind is what takes the biggest toll on us. Just my 2 cents.
Well, it's just like
the heat would if we had it more days, but we don't have the extreme heat a ton of days.
Yeah. No, not really.
Yeah. One of the things that I enjoy a lot, though, Nick, is the whole camaraderie in the shack during a weather delay. I like it when all the guys are in there and we're wondering, everybody's like, what's the update? What does the radar say? How long is this going? Or, when are we going back out? Some guys play cribbage. Some guys are, just out sitting in a golf cart on their phone. A lot of guys are just telling stories. I think that's where we fall in, is kind of in the sit around and chit chat kind of category.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like those times? To me, that's why you caddy.
Yeah, I do. Like in the moment, you're like, God, this sucks. I hate it so much. Like, I just wish my players would quit. But then you look back at it and you're like, yeah, that was actually kind of awesome. Just sitting around with Mark telling stupid stories, hearing him tell all his stupid stories that I've heard 30 times.
Wow.
I said I like it.
Yeah, I that kind of hurt my feelings. No, I'm kidding, Nick. You couldn't hurt my feelings. I know you're too good natured.
Yes.
No, I think, actually it is funny because there are stories that we've all heard from each other more than once, I'm sure. And you can't even remember who you tell certain things to.
Yeah.
And so, that certainly happens. And it's like guys are fighting for airtime too, for when it's their turn to be able to tell and stuff. So it's, I enjoy it. We have one friend who, does a good job of pacing the room.
I know you're talking.
Yeah. Yes. Creating anxiety for all, but, in a way that is near and dear to my heart. And he gets good intel, so.
He does.
But then there's the days when, the manager comes out and everybody gets cut at once, or maybe like 25 guys, 30 guys in there. And that's where a lot of guys will decide, a lot go to the caddy bar across the street. So that's fun. There's, days last year where me and some guys went and got wings and stuff. And you just feel like it's such a treat. You feel like we're grown men, going to be 50 years old, and I can still get that feeling of what it's like for my kids to get a snow day for school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to replicate that feeling. It's just so awesome. You're like, all right, we're done. Let's go.
Yeah, and listeners out there are probably like, why would they want it? Then they don't make any money.
Yeah.
Guys, I get it. And we don't want it all the time. We're talking once or twice a season.
Yeah.
It just is a nice respite for the body. It's a nice respite for the mind. It's good for the social camaraderie of the caddies and stuff. Obviously, none of us can make a habit of it. And none of us really want to see our players, miss their rounds or whatever. Sometimes it's not even players quit. Sometimes players decide to go on without a caddy or whatever because they figure it's not worth it because the course isn't in a condition that they're going to score or whatever. So it's a variety of things, but it's kind of like a treat and it's fun. And it's part of the job of being a caddy is it's made infinitely better by being in the Caddy Shack and having those shared experiences. And one of the cool things is when you have those extreme days to then be able to retell those stories later. It's what it's all about. We love it. So a lot of fun. And so this year, as we get ready for the season, I always think it's funny, and Pebble Beach was a good reminder of it. We're at the part of the off season where we're starting to glamorize the job. So in our heads, I know when we're talking about like, I can't wait to get out there. Mm-hmm. We're all visualizing that 70-degree, no wind, sunny day. And when I watched Pebble, I'm like, yeah, that's more what it's going to be like in May on a lot of days. So let's batten down the hatches and maybe enjoy a little bit of more time off. But it's just part of where we work. I always wonder like how different the job is at a place like, I don't know where in California that might have just kind of the constant moderate, temp and sun all year, how nice that would be. But, it's great where we're at, and it is fun to see the crashing lake and all the good stuff we have with it. So, no, but we're starting to itch getting out there. I know I am. I'm getting antsy, and I'm ready for it, and I'm ready for whatever gets thrown at us. I'm hoping this year the opening weekend is a little better than last year. Last year was, and it's funny because we're having like an extremely easy winter. I mean, I've shoveled snow one time and we're into February.
Well, that's because your wife shovels it, doesn't she?
Nah. Easy. We shovel it together. No, but no, it's only been one shovelable snow. And yeah. And then, so it's been an easy winter. But the thing is that isn't as great as I remember from my childhood is spring. So we might still see some stuff later on that, but hopefully this is the sign of a great weather season to come. All right, Nick, until then though, until we're carrying the rain-soaked, waterlogged heavy baggage of our players out on the golf course, looking to carry some heavy baggage for some folks out in the world, help lighten their load, see how we can be a good life caddy, so to speak. Did you have any opportunities this past week to be such?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a friend that kind of like yourself, trying to get back into, eating well and exercising regularly. Sounds like he's succeeding, so I want to give him a shout out for that. I don't think he listens to the show, so I don't think he would hear what I have to say, but way to go, Ryan.
Yeah. Well, first off, get Ryan to listen to the show. And then secondly, why aren't you helping me?
I know I should. I know. I should be a better friend like that.
Right. Yeah. This I was telling you, this cold's been a big pain as far as getting out and getting some exercise in. And so I just feel myself like I look at a cookie or something and my butt starts to jiggle. I'm gaining weight or something. So
yeah. I know how it goes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm a little sad, I've been working at the sober house. I've been having those opportunities. And last week even talked about some guys moving out, and we have to protect confidentiality and stuff over there. So I don't want to give too many details, but there's just a couple of instances, a couple of people where there's been some big setbacks. And it's just hard to see because you invest in them. They're investing in themselves. You think in one case, you're like, okay, I thought we were good. And in another, you're like, you got to get with the program. So kind of came at some falls from some different places, but the result nonetheless is negative all the same. And so I'm reminded that as we're out on the golf course, as we're living in life, just like we have a next shot if we're out of bounds, there's this next shot full of hope and opportunity. If we're hitting them straight, there's a next shot, and it can kind of get shanked. We have to stay vigilant. We got to keep practicing. We got to keep working at it. We got to keep our heads, down and focused on the task at hand. Otherwise, we might just kind of veer a little bit. So hopefully somebody out there listening will maybe have a little reset if they're seeing those temptations in their life, going to keep plugging along and keep helping people and keep reminding people, okay, life isn't also linear and that it's always this uphill ascent. We're going to have ups and downs, and there's always a way back. That's the greatest truth I know, is that if you're out of bounds, if you're in a bunker, if you're hurting, if it seems like it's too big of a mess and you're too far in the muck, on this side of the ground, there's always a next shot full of hope and opportunity. So take yours.